Okay, John March here, Montgomery County Tea Party. It's December 17th at 2 p.m. And we are here with Jessica Steinmann. With me are Larry Rogers, Luis Pedraza, and Lana Horde. Good day to you.
Hey guys.
Thanks for coming in,
Of
answering the
course.
questionnaire. And as we just discussed, if you want to take up the 5 minute opening, elevator speech of sorts, feel free, and then we'll jump into the Q&A.
Sounds good. So I'm Jessica Steinmann. I'm running for Congress in Texas 8. I have been fighting for the conservative movement and our conservative values my whole career. So I started off actually working at Harris County GOP, helping in the grassroots effort, went to work for Senator Ted Cruz, who's endorsed me in this race. Then I moved up to DC. I was asked to come by the president. I was appointed by the president to the Department of Justice. I led there a division. I was appointed as the director of the Office of Victims of Crime. So I led the largest federal funded office that combated human trafficking. So oversaw about $9 billion, all funding that's not taxpayer funds. So it's all criminal penalties that's paid out to help crime victims. Absolutely loved that job. Would have stayed, another 4 years, but the Biden administration came in, and as you guys know, we were booted out. So after that, and I think you guys remember in the movement, after January 6th, a lot of people turned their back on the president. I did not. I continued fighting in the America First movement. My husband and I moved back to Texas then, and I actually worked for the Texas legislator. I helped write the Texas election bill that was a landmark election bill in Texas. And if you guys remember, that's when the Democrats fled up to DC and protest, said it was the worst bill ever. Of course, brought, election integrity, brought fraud protection, that was right on top of our 2020 election. So, a lot of good work done there. Then I went over and started working at America First Policy Institute. So at America First, I brought conservative litigation, really pushing back on, again, all the woke left. And this was in those 4 years of the Biden administration. So everything from, boys and girls sports. I sued the state of Oregon. The COVID vaccine mandates of the Biden administration, sued the Biden administration over those. Our religious liberty rights, I represented 36 members of the Air Force, again, pushing back on the Biden administration. DEI in higher education, sued or investigated the state. We still have an ongoing investigation against Cornell University, pushed back parental rights, immigration issues, election integrity. So that year leading up to this 2024 election, we had lawsuits really all over the country, mostly in kind of your contested purple cities and states. So really not in Texas. We spent our resources wisely. And again, just pushing back on that woke left and the fraud that we saw in 2020 to make sure we could secure this election. I also, at America First, we really helped the Trump administration build for his second administration. So everything from drafting executive orders to help him get ready to agency plans. We had about 90 of our staff. So we're about 200 staff at AFPI. I'm one of 6 executives there. We had about 90 staff go into the second Trump administration. About half of his cabinet are my former colleagues. And that's one thing that I think sets me apart from other candidates running is just that policy experience coupled with those relationships. I'm going to be able to be effective day one in this seat where you get a lot of people running for Congress that have never done policy work. And you guys know this very well because you're, in-depth policy people too. I know the policy work, but I also have the relationships to get things done. So let's say something comes up in Veterans Affairs that affects District 8. I know Doug Collins because I worked with him. I know his general counsel, Jimmy Bear, is a good friend. We can call and get things done faster for our community and just be more effective for our people here. And so I think in that spot, I'm, uniquely positioned not just for District 8, but to really help the Trump administration. So the president has, 2 more years to get things done. And we need people in this seat that can get up there and get things done, that aren't going to be learning, that have never, that are new to the movement or trying to figure it out. Again, the president needs people potentially with a slim majority. We need people that can get in there and be effective. I'm also the only one in this race with a proven conservative track record. And I think I think that's so important because that'll show you how I'm going to vote. You can look back on almost any issue that we'll probably bring up today and see the work I've done it and see, my opinions on it. We have filed lawsuits or filed papers on it. And I think why that's also important is, you know, anyone can get up and look up a list of talking points from the Republican Party. That's easy to pull them up and see where we stand on a lot of things. But where are your results and who's going to get things done? And you can look up and see that I'm the one that have gotten results for our movement. As recent, and I'm sure we'll go through a lot of them as we kind of hit different topics today, but even just as recent as a couple weeks ago. So Trump was trying to get redistricting done in Texas. I actually filed within a weekend. We had a weekend when Paxton filed on a Friday afternoon. We had to file briefs on Monday. I worked with the administration and filed amicus briefs in that Supreme Court case to help Trump get those 5 seats. And so it's back to when you hear other candidates in this race, and again, I think most people will say about the same conservative talking points, but who's actually doing it? And I'm not even, just talking about, the last 10 years of my work, but I'm doing it now. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, helping Trump keep his majority now, not just talking about when I get up there, I'm going to help secure the border. I've been down to the border with CBP. I'm working with immigration. I'm filing immigration cases. So again, I think when you look at this, look at who has that track record. And last little piece, because I know we got to wrap up. I think also look at who's been involved in our movement. You guys have known me before I threw my name in the hat for Congress. I've been involved in the grassroots. My husband's involved in the grassroots. I mean, that's where Brandon and I, my husband, that's where we met, is in conservative politics. I mean, that's kind of our both passion project and our jobs, and what we spend all of our time on, too much time on. But also, who else has been to precinct conventions, senatorial conventions, state level? Brandon and I have both been to all of those for years. We're not just popping into this. And I also believe who's involved in our community. We're on boards in our community. Our kids, we had our kids in this community. I think right now, from what we've seen, it looks like I'm also the only person running that actually lives in District 8. And I think that's important to know your community, right? And know your neighbors. So to wrap it up, I again, love your vote. Love anyone who's watching's vote. I think I'm the fighter that can help President Trump, but also really represent this district well.
Okay, thank you for that. In one of our questions, we asked, do you see a double standard in the treatment of J6 protesters compared with Antifa, BLM, pro-Palestinian protesters, etc.? What would you do to resolve it? You talked about that. You gave an answer. What is it that can be done to those that pushed and achieved prosecution of these guys that it was not warranted? I mean, yeah, there were a couple probably lawbreakers that went in causing problems. May have been the FBI more than
a few, yeah,
than the conservative people. But those that were sitting in judgment were judging pretty quick, and they all blamed it on Trump, as we know. You look at the, what is it, $20 billion lawsuit that Trump has against J6, against BBC on behalf of the J6, and them manipulating what he said. What can be done to these people? I mean, you see what Trump's doing with BBC. What about these other people? Liz Cheney, who's the guy from here, Kitzinger. What is it that can be done about those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think your question is spot on. There was, 100%, ideological pick here. I mean, it was the left going after us, the lawfare, a little bit to the side of that. I mean, we saw the lawfare against Trump. I mean, just, nonstop from the left, lawsuits that we never even contemplated would ever be brought against a president, president of the United States. We, again, looking back to kind of what I started with is results driven. When Alvin Bragg sued the president, I sued Alvin Bragg back. And so again, you want people in this space that understand these questions, can jump in and figure out how to solve it. So a couple things that I'd like to look at here is first, I mean, one big problem, nationwide injunctions. It seems a little to the side of this, but it plays into all of this. That was used by the left for lawfare for years. That is something that Congress, and there's been different bills that have popped up, but that is something Congress needs to address. And again, it seems a little to the side, but it all affects how the judiciary system is run. Another piece, I think the big problem we're talking about here is the DOJ and the FBI. And I have been inside, obviously was inside the DOJ. We need reform at the DOJ, and this has to be looked at by Congress. I think the Trump administration has done a great job jumping in there, but there's a lot more to be done. My hope is that there's a lot more prosecutions to come. Lawsuits do take time. So and I don't have insight to right now what the Attorney General is doing, but you want to have it lined up. You want to have all your ducks in a row before we go and prosecute. So my hope is that that's what's happening there inside the DOJ. But it is so important that we are not letting career woke left running the DOJ. And again, I saw that when I was there. The department I ran, there was a couple people, the section I ran was probably about 60 to 75 people, a couple people politically aligned with us, the 95% far woke left. I mean, and that is a problem. I mean, and so when you're a political trying to get things done, you are just battling back all day long. And so to then make an advancement, to do something positive is even more. So again, I think it's some hard looks at especially DOJ.
All right, Larry.
Your educational background, are you an attorney?
I am an attorney.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to undergrad for business and finance. I went to UT. So sorry if there's any Aggies. My sister went to A&M for a little bit. So yeah, go Longhorns. And then I went to Baylor for law school. And I started my practice downtown Houston, big law firm, commercial litigation. I love the practice of law. I love the intellectual practice of it, but and if you know me, I could not see myself in front of a computer for 10 hours a day writing briefs. And so, and that's really when I started to become politically active, is really around that time. In law school, I was just focused on my books, and even the beginning of my practice, just working all the time. And so, but I started to kind of slowly get more involved and really realize I can use my law degree to something I'm passionate about. And so I left the law firm. I think at the time I had people that just thought I was absolutely crazy. I mean, as a, late 20s, making very large amounts downtown Houston to making, probably even like a seventh of the salary, I'd say at the time. And luckily my family knew me, knew the person I was, and this is the route that I wanted to go and take the education that I had. And, I think we are blessed to live in this society. And that's what I saw. I wanted to take what I learned, take my skills. This is what I'm good at. I'm good at law and policy, and put it towards something I'm passionate about and something I can make a difference. And that's when this seat opened up, that's exactly what I saw too. I think there's a lot of things that everyone in this room could be doing with their time differently, but we're all passionate about it. And making that kind of sacrifice in your life to give back to our community. And honestly, if we don't do this, who's going to do it? And that's why when people kind of ask me, why are you doing this? You've got other things going on, got a family. And again, that's why we do. And that's why I know all of you guys do it. If we don't step up and use the skills we've been given in life, the American values are going to fall. We need good people to step up.
Can't argue with that. So let's talk money.
There we go.
So yeah, really. So to run for office, to stay in office, it takes a tremendous amount of money. I saw that you got some pretty large donations already.
Yeah.
So and part of that being that's the establishment. Sometimes could be conceived as the establishment. How do you feel about not owing these people a lot of favors because they are financing you?
Yeah.
And so I think it's sometimes it's a dilemma, right? You want to do it, but you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think a couple things. So first, starting off, and this is maybe more of a Texas issue, but looking no, it's a federal issue too. Taxpayer funded lobbyists. That's an issue. That's an issue in Texas and federal. We have taxpayer money that goes into agencies, Texas agencies that, again, they are lobbying. And so that's something that needs to end. I think in regards to just my specific donations, we've had everything from like, $1 donations to the maximum. Luckily, again, I think that the people that donate to me, it's the same story I started off with. When I talk to like a brand new donor, I tell them the exact same story. I talk about the lawsuits I've done, the work I've done. And if they don't like that type of work, I don't get a donation, or they walk away. And I've seen people say, you know what, you're too Trump. You're too. I've had some people say you're not business enough. You're too conservative value movement. And that's okay with me. So I think for my donors, they've seen my record, and I'm going to be the same person. So I think they know what they're getting. And again, if they walk away, that's fine. And if at some point in my career I lose the race because I stuck to my values, that's going to be okay with me too. I think, and I think you'll see that throughout my career. I mean, I would say when you were in the Trump administration, afterwards, I was there till the last day, January 20th, 11:59 a.m. It was hard for a lot of us to get jobs afterwards, where if you look back at prior administrations, like after the Bush administration, the job that I would have had, the same job then, just got very, great law firm jobs. People were looking out for them. After the Trump administration, it was not, and especially again, after January 6th, it was not the same. And even in a conservative state like Texas. But again, that's, I'm going to always stand on those principles, and sometimes there might be hard times, right? Sometimes you might get less donations because of that, but we've been through that before, and we'll come out. I just, it's always most important to stick to your values on this.
Well, and just as a follow-up, I've
Yeah.
supported so many people sometimes, and then as years go on, I look at the record, it
Yeah.
becomes less and less attractive, and certainly it's a trap within politics. Okay,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
So don't go in the trap, please. And we'll go from there.
Yeah.
I love what you said about looking up where is the money going, because you just follow the money, and that tells you if there's any quid pro quo relationships there. So one of the things we're hoping to do through having type of vetting that we do is we're educating voters how to look these things up for themselves.
Yes.
OpenSecrets.org, the Federal Election Commission, the Texas Ethics Commission. It's all out there if you know where to look. So if there's ever wondering about where does someone stand, and is there an implied quid pro quo because they gave a huge donation to somebody, then you can get the information. It's all out there. So,
and luckily at the federal level, we are capped too, right?
Yeah.
So no donation is going to ever make or break you, to be honest, at the federal level. I mean, we are at 3,500 per person per election, and we have to raise, over $1 million. So, no donation, one person walks away, it's never going to affect you there.
That's kind of my second question. But
Yeah.
I'll wait for
Yeah.
that.
Wait for another
I
round.
wanted to do a quick question. We had a question here about what, if any, penalties should employers face for hiring illegal aliens knowingly or through failure to use E-Verify. And I loved your answer. I want you to elaborate on it, but also
I can see what I said
go
too.
ahead and look at it real quick. We had a conversation. I'd introduced you to somebody that had a unique perspective on those H-1B visas.
Yeah.
So maybe he might be able to help with some policy because of the perspective he had.
Yeah.
And so that's another big concern I have is, what can we do about those H-1B visas and stopping that chain migration that some of these huge corporations like Amazon and Meta and tech companies are bringing in all these skilled laborers from out of the country and paying them a lot less money than Americans to do some of those jobs.
Yeah.
So,
I think obviously illegal immigration was one of the biggest problems that came out of the Biden administration. And I really saw it firsthand. So my role, like I said, at the Department of Justice, a lot of it was focused on combating human trafficking. I mean, I sat down with victims of trafficking. Right here, so about 30 minutes south of the district, I've sat down with Alexis Nungri. Her daughter Jocelyn was murdered by two illegal immigrants. She was a 12-year-old girl. And actually, I sat down with her when I was, about 8 months pregnant myself this last time, and spent a good And of course, you're hormonal when you're very pregnant, and hearing those stories, it makes you absolutely sick. Not just the loss that she had, but that it was preventable. I mean, it was literally all preventable by the Biden administration, stopping illegal immigration. So I think exactly what you're talking about, that the I think getting back to kind of the employer question, like having stricter fines on employers is so important, because people are coming over here for the American dream illegally. We want legal immigrants. I want to make that clear. The GOP, wants legal immigrants, and we got to be better about getting that out. But they want to come over for the benefits of our country illegally, and companies continually, incentivizing that by jobs, by payment is, they will continue to come. So we've got to cut it off at places like that, or else people will continue to come and have stricter fines. And I think, again, I know it's short on time. We've got to always move on to the next question, but this is another space where, and I'd love to talk about immigration more if we have more time, but this is another space where I think I'm uniquely qualified. I mean, I'm likely, I haven't asked my opponents, but I'm likely the only one that's been down to the border. I've been down to the border with CBP agents, met with them. That's why I've also been endorsed by their counsel. I've worked directly with Chad Wolf, who's our former DHS secretary. And this is a topic that I am, uniquely qualified for, to help, again, our community and the state of Texas and our nation, because it's something I've spent a lot of time. And yeah, all in there, because I know the time's always short, but.
We throw this question out there to everybody, and we get a lot of answers to it. How many terms do you plan to serve?
So yeah, I am 100% before a term limits. I've signed the term limit pledge. I think that would be great to get done. I think all of us have seen, I think you just talked about it. People go up there, they eventually, after 20 or 30 years, become part of the swamp. I do think one thing I would say too is, if we get something like that done soon, I think I become even more useful again to this district and become a leader faster. As you guys know, it takes time to matriculate in Congress, to become any kind of chair of a committee. If we have term limits, that is significantly changed. And then we look at who can get things done in, whatever it is, 6 years, 8 years. And again, because of my background in policy, because of my, relationships, I can get things done faster if we do have that kind of cap. But I would say I'm not going to self-impose a cap. I will tell you, when I am feeling like I'm not getting anything done there, when I feel like I'm complacent, anything like that, I will decide to step down. Again, I think there's, again, a lot of us in this room could be doing a lot of things. I'm one of those people that, like, I'm all in, I'm passionate about something, and I'm results driven. And the moment that it's not that case, I would like somebody else to step in, and I will move on to whatever else that I can do to be successful. Because that's just not, I wake up every day, and that's kind of what drives me. So, and, at the point where I'm not useful and getting things done is when I'll step down.
Okay, because Corcoran's been there, 50, 60 years, and he thinks he's really got something done, and
Hasn't been there.
that's
It just feels like
that's
a
it
time.
feels like
It does feel
like
like.
Seems like.
it's the reason for
We have
term
some
limits.
members that are very long time.
Yeah.
Yes. And I've met with some that, and all of us have seen too, that, mental capacity is not the same, and, it's people need to step down a lot earlier. And honestly, I really honor that Morgan Luttrell, the incumbent congressman, did that. He decided, hey, this is not the spot for me. I'm going to step down and let someone else jump in. And that's what him and I had talked about when he stepped down from this seat was, and why he's endorsed me in the race is, again, he looked around the community and said, I know you can go up there and represent our community well. You know what you're doing. He's done the job enough to look around and see, who would I like to replace me? Who can be useful? And he's a public servant at heart too. And I think, again, wants, is not the place for him right now, but wants someone else to continue doing good work up there.
Okay, Larry.
One of our questions was, what does it mean to you to be a conservative? And I'd like for you to elaborate on that because I thought it was very, very good. Right out of your answer was being a conservative means
See.
believing in freedom, faith, and personal responsibility because those are the principles that make America exceptional. Elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were set up as America was set up as a limited government. Power back in the people, power back in the states, people to, have their individual rights and freedoms and govern their life how they best see fit. And sometimes that's not the same way I would or you would think, but that is their choice. And that's why we have such an amazing government and democracy. We've gotten further away from that. We need to continue having more limited government. We need to focus on what made America great. What are our American values? Again, kind of pointing back to faith, freedom, the personal responsibility. We have this mentality here of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and that's you can go from something different to something very different in your lifetime, and your kids can go from that. And so I think that's what all of us here, I think, in this room, and honestly, the president. I think the president sees that, and that's why people love the president too. Is he's come forward with those ideas right off the bat, and said, "I love America." I mean, that's kind of his slogan, right? It's MAGA, but it's really, "I love America. Let's bring America back to what we all value and what made us the greatest nation on earth."
Great.
So election integrity is another one of my
Yeah.
hot buttons. Right now in Texas, we have all these great election laws, and two things happen. The SOS, Texas SOS, simply doesn't enforce. There's no teeth in a lot of the laws.
Yeah.
They don't enforce it, and then you have
Yeah.
DAs that decide, oh, I don't feel like prosecuting anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is there anything from a federal side we can do with that? Because it really is hurting. Now, sure, you can make the case Montgomery County is generally okay,
Yeah.
but
There's
Harris,
always
Dallas,
something. Yeah.
Austin, or Travis.
Yeah.
There
Yeah,
are
yeah.
many issues there that if we don't have voter integrity, we really don't have a country.
Yeah. No, I think that is the cornerstone. If we cannot have the correct votes, we will not get the policy done. And it is difficult, I would say. This goes back to federalism too, right? If we have the federal government jump in on states' rights issues, where does that lead us? And so I feel exactly the same way as you do. I would love to go into, especially some of these blue states, and just say, here's what it is, here's what you need to do. But I think the way our country's built on federalism, we need the federal government to stay out at some point and leave what's reserved for the states in the states. That being said, I mean, it does take national efforts to go state by state and clean up. And I think that's something that more of the conservative movement needs to be more efficient with. In the state of Texas, I think there's over the last two terms, there's been more teeth put into our election bills. There can be more, though. Luckily, we've given some things to our state attorney general to do. Again, there can still be more. I mean, that's the back check. If these, if a Blue County's election administrator or isn't doing the work, or the DA is not prosecuting, who's there to check it out? So we really need the state AG to step in. And again, the state AG needs the power to do it. So I would agree, though. I mean, this is where we're, looking at, I know we're over time again, but looking at, mail-in ballots, that was our biggest piece of fraud during 2020. No doubt about that. And that's something that's still relatively large amount in Texas of votes. Tightening up voter ID, right? There's still quite a few ways that you can still vote in Texas. And we all kind of think it's just your license that Texas has gotten it tight. It's not that tight. There's still, and I have to look up the specific bill. I want to say there's like 7 or 8 different ways you can bring some kind of identification to the poll. And again, I want to look it up to be exact, but it's. I don't think it's tight enough. Again, I do think it's mostly a state level issue. I think from a national perspective, there are things. Again, I always jump back to the lawsuit side that we could be putting pressure on states, and we did this through my organization. I sued the Secretary of State of Arizona. We sued in Georgia, we sued in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, all this leading up to 2024. So I think I think there's probably less congressionally to do. There's a lot in the states. There's a lot in the judicial system that can be done, though. And we've seen, honestly, President Trump do some of it through executive order, which is good. But we all know, it's not long-term fixes. So.
And something else that I love the answer about let's keep the federalism at bay because it could be a slippery slope for us.
Yeah.
Uh,
Especially in this election space.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because the Democrats' first bill, either first or second bill, every time is to basically federalize election work, and that's
right. Yeah.
It's just that slippery. Yeah, it's that slippery slope where if we get little pieces, where does it go? Again,
yeah. On that same idea though about keeping things. The resources you have to throw at it without going down the slippery slope. So we have a similar situation, just like you'll have a new weapon in your arsenal if you're elected to the House, you'll have a bully pulpit. So there is some PR value to being able to put pressure at a public place, in the public arena, as well as the kind of pressure you would put from DOJ or from a legal perspective to try to force these states to be more compliant to their own laws. But
100%.
I want to apply that same concept to immigration again. So we had questions about what should we do about sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants. And we also had questions about explain the relationships between the states and federal government between maintaining the border. And, if we had any significant failures there, the federal government, what did we do?
What was the first one against states?
The first one was about sanctuary cities.
Yeah,
what should we be doing? You had a very strong position there. I want you to reiterate that. And then also a very strong position on, I think you used the word that Washington failed to secure the border.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, we saw this again during the Biden administration. The Biden administration failed to secure our border. Governor Abbott, the state of Texas, had to step up and, literally fund Texas taxpayer funds to secure our border for the nation. This was, a benefit for the nation. That is a function of the federal government. And so, Texas has or it will be, paid back for that, but that can't be something that goes back and forth every Democrat or Republican administration. And then we look at sanctuary cities. This has been going on now for 8 years, almost a decade, let's say. Again, this is one of those where you look at, I think my opponents in the race will say they're, anti, illegal immigration, anti-sanctuary cities. What have they done about it, though? I have I'm actually currently working with the Indiana Attorney General, Todd Rokita, and we are investigating some of the cities there that are sanctuary cities in the state, and bringing lawsuits against those. Again, it's one thing to just say, hey, we're against this. It's another thing to go out and get things done. I think, that, this is one of you see this, I think you guys see this too, in our grassroots and our voters. This is still one of the biggest topics that is on our minds. I think this and economy, I think are the two big topics I hear day in, day out. It's something that I also, when President Trump took over, it was you talked to CBP agents, night and day difference down there, night and day. Just and not even just numbers coming across, just really stopping, but morale of CBP.
You're saying customs and border
Customs and border patrol agents. Yeah, sorry. Too many DC acronyms. Yeah, so customs and border patrol agents. Just the morale, they're back to doing what they are supposed to be doing. Again, I've been down to the border, and they are not given the resources to do their basic job. And again, having a leader in the White House that is for our, border patrol and our law enforcement makes the job, 1,000 times easier and better and more effective too.
On that point and discussion, do you remember how long it was between when Biden would enforce the border and Abbott? finally did something about it?
No, what
Because
was it like?
It was a
like,
while.
It was a decent amount of time. I
it
don't.
was
It
like
was
3 years.
Operation. Oh, really? I didn't realize it was that
It's
much.
maybe two and a half, but it was
Okay.
pretty close to the end of.
And do you think
It was closer to because it was Operation Lone Star,
Lone
or
Star,
is that
yeah.
it? Yeah.
Started with
so? Do you think his idea of flying those folks out of Texas or busing
Busing
them
'em.
or whatever
Mhm.
he did into other state was really smart, or should he just send them south? And here's why:
Hmm.
if they stay here, they're problematic.
Yeah.
If you ship them to another state, what does it do? It builds up their population
Yeah.
to where they can keep the justify their Congress.
Yeah.
More
You
congressional
know,
seats. Is that
I'm
what
sorry.
are you saying more congressional seats? Or?
I mean, that's an
Exactly.
issue.
Or
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
hold
So
what they
that's an issue.
have because they've been losing.
Yeah.
And so, um, I don't know. Can you weigh in on that a little bit
Yeah,
more?
I would
What should have been
say,
done
yeah,
here?
it's a difficult. So I would say what Trump is doing is right. Like when we're in power, he came in, get people in detention facilities, get the worst of the worst off of our streets, and get them back, get them out of our country. I mean that should be the overall goal of everyone, right? Just even though there's a blue state, I'm not trying to harm a blue state citizens either. Like, let's get the bad people out of our country. That needs to be step one. We care about the entire American citizens. I think there was some benefit to sending maybe small portions of people to another state because, and I think this is kind of back to what you said, Lana, is more of that like messaging perspective. I think, we're here in Houston. This is one of the number one hubs of human trafficking in the United States. We see, again, we talked about, Jocelyn. We see people, in our neighborhood, in our spheres of influence. I've got a colleague whose daughter, overdosed on fentanyl. We see it more here in Texas, but some of these places, more on the East Coast, don't see the day-to-day effects. So I think there's some benefit to what was done because it's easy to sit out away from what's happening and say, no, we should let all these illegal immigrants in. Let's let everyone into our country. And then to see the effects of crime happening in your community because of illegal immigration. And that did change hearts and minds. But I'd say we use it as a communications, a let's change hearts and minds. But the vast majority, I think you're right, John, vast majority, we need to just get out of the country. We don't need criminals here in our country. That's an easy one.
Push
Yeah.
them back to Mexico or let them make this come over, but still.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Less and less.
Yeah, yeah.
We're getting him on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Trump is.
Okay, one of our questions was, do you support or oppose efforts to abolish the Department of Education? And you said, and more of that question was why or why not,
Yeah.
and what are the most
Great question.
valuable components of the department? So my question is to you, I'd like for you to elaborate on that. But the first part of my question is going to be, do you think that this administration will actually do away with the Department of Education?
Yeah. So Department of Education is one of those, I think we talked about before, the federalism issues. And in general, there are too many agencies, too many government employees doing functions up in DC. And I think the Trump administration came in the second time and did a great job of cleaning out some of that. We had Doge come in, we had entities like USAID, just digging into those funding streams. I think Department of Education is uniquely positioned. We do not need a federal Department of Education where taxpayer money is coming in and then going straight back out to this. I mean, it makes no sense. It's literally just overhead. So it's one of those that the fun and back to education. Education is supposed to be reserved for the states. Push it back to local, not even local. Push it back, to parents, and that's another issue too. I've been very involved in a lot of parental rights cases too, but I think this is one of those that is so important that Trump gets done. I know, I personally know Secretary Linda McMahon very well. She is 100% towards getting her department gone. I know that well. This is not just a talking point. I've sat in some meetings with her where she's had people help me get this done. Trump wants to get it done. She wants to get it done. Unfortunately, there are pieces of it that are congressionally mandated. So it can't just be all done by executive action, but they are working on that. And that's where you need to get partners in Congress that come along and help them move. Again, she can't do it all herself. We've got to get partners in Congress that can move that. Some funding is going to need to stay federal. Let's say, civil rights investigations. That's a piece that's federal. That can go to DOJ, or there's some pieces that need to get moved by Congress because they are congressionally mandated to do that. So I really think I think that's something I know this is something that they are really going after. I mean, her job is to get rid of her own position, and she'll say that. But I think this is also not just a problem in the Department of Education. Again, my experience being at DOJ, there is a lot of not just like the fraud piece of it, but just waste, just overhead waste that needs to be, look at fine comb, or what is it? Fine tooth comb. What's the word? Look through all these grant programs. There is stuff that can be cut out of every single one. There is overhead bureaucracy in every department up there. And I know people are cutting back. There is more that can be cut back. And I think that is something Trump has brought to light. And I think there is now finally a motivation to start doing that too.
So, how are you going to behave when a Democratic president comes to the presidency? It's going to happen. Okay.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. The way that we have a cyclic society. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Anyway, so whenever we have a Democrat in office, like one of the things that I really just didn't like, our CD2 rep did not condemn J6, what was happening to J6ers. I think every person in Congress should have done that.
Mhm.
It doesn't take much effort to do that, but
Yeah.
they were all afraid to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, how are you going to deal with working with a Democratic? What are you going to do? What are you going to help us carry forward when that happens?
Yeah, I think I've been in that situation before, really the last 4 years. I mean, this is not something I'm new to. And again, you can look back at my record over those last 4 years, and I have called out the Biden administration specifically on a lot of these issues. COVID vaccine mandates. I brought a case up to the Supreme Court against Biden, against his Department of Labor's OSHA, so that's supposed to do workplace safety. They mandated all small businesses, and I forget the exact number, but it's something like over 50 employees. Everyone had to get the vaccine. This would have affected 80 million Americans. I was not bashful in coming out strong on that when there are people on our side that were for the vaccine at that point. And so again, I think it's hard to say what exactly will happen during another White House and how I'll react to that. But I think you can look at my past behavior and my past works against Biden. And again, same thing. So election integrity, Biden administration put into place an EO that basically weaponized all of the federal agencies to then become GOTV, get out the vote agencies. Again, then grant programs tied to it that were all left-wing programs. I sued the Biden administration. So again, I am not one that's going to sit on the side and let some of these things happen when, I think again, look at past behavior
Look at your history.
Yeah, will indicate future behavior too.
So we got 2 more years of Trump. Whoever wins this office is going to be sworn in January of 27. And you'll have 2 years of overlap with the Trump administration. I personally feel that we have to hit the ground running. We've got to spend all of our time codifying all these executive orders that he is putting in place and doing as much as we can to insulate against a possible Democrat coming in 2 more years. We're all hoping that we have 8 more years of J.D. Vance or somebody like him. But what if that doesn't happen? To Lewis's question, what do you feel is going to be priority 1 when you get to DC, and why?
Yeah, this is another, like I said kind of at the beginning, this is one of those places I feel like I am uniquely qualified to help our district, to help the Trump administration. he, like you said, he has 2 years to get things done. We don't need someone that's going to come in this space and is learning for a year and a half, or barely gets in. I've been close to the Trump administration. I'm close with them now. Like I said, I've talked to Linda directly about how to shut down the Department of Education, so I can come in and get bills on the floor on that, and work with other congressional members, because I directly know, I know her chief of staff, Rachel, her deputy Chase, I know their policy team. I think priorities of the administration is, first of all, always going to be economy. I mean, that's Trump. He is a businessman, and that's what the American people want. I think that, again, with my skill set, how I can also be useful is on that more judiciary, Department of Justice kind of weaponization side, and the work that I've done there in that space. I sat down about 2 weeks ago with Jim Jordan, just talking about, again, what value I can bring to that committee. Again, just based on my experience. Hopefully we win the majority. If we don't win the majority, that'll be where 2 years of left pushing back, likely impeachment proceedings on whatever the new made up thing of the day is. And so that's why I feel like I can be uniquely useful to the president in that space on judiciary, defending the president, because it's something that that's my day job too, right? I'm a lawyer. I've been in court. I know how to do that. But then looking at bills, we talked about, again, nationwide injunctions, the lawfare pieces. There's so much to do there in that judiciary space too, that I think I can be very useful, not just to the Trump administration, but just looking forward to the GOP. We talked about at some point another Democrat president will be there, and things flip over. We need to get some of this figured out when we can, or again, things will slip back to where they were in Biden, and probably worse too. So again, I think this is one of those places, Lana, like you said, we have 2 years, and our community can decide, who they want to send up there to help the president.
Okay, yeah, probably last question here. Who in Congress, that'd be House and Senate, do you identify with most?
Yeah. I think this is always a hard question, because everyone is very different. I'm very conservative. People that I've relied on my career are people like Senator Cruz. I mean, that's really when I came into the movement. That's the person that I've spent a lot of time with personally, and kind of, learned a lot from, similar constitutional lawyer background. I think, like I said, too, my skill set is going to be most useful in that judiciary space. And again, sitting down with Jim Jordan, I think, is a good example. We're different people, but just his going after the lawfare, the weaponization. I think that's an area where you're going to see that I can be the most use up there. And so that's probably, again, it's always hard to figure out who exactly you look like, because you don't look like anyone else. But I think that's probably more of the space that I'm going to fill up there.
Okay,
I got one quick one.
sure.
Me and
Should I
mother,
time it?
I'll keep it short.
you have 2 daughters? Is that
2 sons.
2 sons.
Yeah.
Oh.
2 boys.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
Well,
I think our bank account lucked
I
out
had
with all the
3
girl
Yeah,
clothes.
it's $30,000 to $50,000
Yeah,
for the girls.
I could see
Yeah.
that.
I had 3 boys before,
Oh,
3 girls before I had both. My question is, how are you going to make that work?
Yeah.
How will you spend time away from your family like that?
yeah. I think this honestly brings us back to kind of the beginning question we talked about is, my husband and I met in public service, and this is what we're passionate about. And I think, and probably like some of y'all too, like our lives are going to look a little different because of that. And I think it's, again, back to, it's so important that people do stand up and make sacrifices in their life for the betterment of our kids, right? And if we don't, I think too, I mean, being a younger mother is different up there. I'll just say that there's not a lot of younger mothers, especially on the GOP side, but I do think we need those voices. I think it affects legislation. We talk about parental rights and kids. I'm in that now with my kids. I see let's say the books. I mean, we got a subscription books that are sent to our house, and I see some of the woke stuff that's coming in. I'm seeing that as a parent now affecting our kids. So I think that perspective is useful up there. I think that perspective is useful to the GOP in recruiting suburban women votes, which we need to keep the majority as well. Um, but yeah, I think our life is going to look a little different. I think I'm very lucky that my husband is also in public service. So, and he's been up on the Hill before, so we know what this looks like. I think it's another one of those, we're going in eyes open to what it looks like. And I think, if we weren't doing this, we would be doing something different that is probably different than what like a normal suburban family looks like anyway. So yeah.
All righty. Thank you for that. So we're at the point now where you can go ahead and take up 5 minutes closing, and then we'll wrap it up.
Great. Well, thank you guys again for having me. I think y'all's input, I know, is very valuable to our community and to our voters. I know that just have been, come up in like the grassroots and being involved in the grassroots. Like I said, my husband and I are part of this community. I think it's so important that we have someone that represents this community, that's involved in our community, that didn't just show up to some of our clubs and our grassroots when they announced they're running for Congress, right? They don't just have, here's the talking points on the Republican side. Anyone can sit down and memorize the talking points. What I would say from voters is sit down, look at the background. Again, you can look at my background and see, hey, this is where she stands on parental rights because she filed this lawsuit against the state of Colorado. She filed this lawsuit against Oregon for boys and girls sports. And you can see where I'm going to fall on all those issues. And not just that, but again, results. I'm a results driven person and want to get things done. And so again, looking back at when you make your choice in this race, look at who can get in there again for our community, for Greater Houston, for Texas, and our nation, and start to make a difference up there. And I think you don't want someone that's going to have to come in and start learning on the job. That unfortunately, we get people that come in and say great things, and we've elected those people before and get up there and vote very differently. So I think it's so important that our community looks at that record and looks at who can be beneficial, not even just in Congress. There's the main piece of Congress, the legislative piece, but there's also the district work, the working with somebody on their IRS benefits, working with the Veterans Affairs people, working on maybe some EPA regulations that are hindering our community again. And that's where I'm affected, where, hey, I know Lee Zeldin over at EPA. I know his chief of staff, Eric, and again, that's beneficial to our community as well. And I think can best represent the people here in Texas 8. So I would love your support and your vote. And jessicasteinmann.com. Steinmann has 2 N's. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, guys.
And good luck in your campaign.
Thank you.
Thank you.